My shirt says the most racist man alive, so you know full well that I know what I'm talking about today. Hello, and welcome back to 828 Politics. Sometimes people say some really stupid things. Sometimes it's enough to get my attention. A good friend of mine over on Politics Amino has often likened his infamous Jackie-graphs to rhetorical sledgehammers. I will take this further. I'm using these videos as a rhetorical guillotine. Over on Politics Mino, I was required by the rules of the community to not mention who this video is about. No such rule is restricting me here on YouTube. Today I want to discuss a local cretin whose dirty laundry needs to be aired. He goes by Local Doomer. Yes, it's as bad as it sounds from the start. This isn't meant at all to harass or disparage them. Though I'll make a joke about them here and there, I believe their beliefs and rhetoric are genuinely harmful, and the tactics they employ to keep themselves out of the line of rhetorical fire is both disingenuous and deserving of examination. Remember, if you know this person or see them online, do not harass them. Do not hate them. If you're going to talk to them, keep things civil. If you're going to attack them, do so intellectually and in the realm of rhetoric, like a sledgehammer or a guillotine. Doomer claims adamantly to not be racist. To quote them specifically, "I don't think there's anything wrong with being another race. Do you have to put words in my mouth and call me a racist? You called me racist with no evidence, Keck. Racial slavery is also wrong. Far left and far right people aren't that different. We all know gays and Satanists are edgy for their reactions, so are racists. All skin tones are beautiful, and everyone should feel proud of the way they were born. People shouldn't be treated differently based on how they look. I'm not a racist, honestly." And you know what's funny? This was originally just going to be a blog exclusive to Politics Amino, but he decided to get very pissy about it and accuse me of breaking the rules, and one of my friends on there of some very serious allegations in the process. That, and he refused to acknowledge anything I said and doubled down. Is this petty? Yeah, a little. But it deserves to be understood publicly regardless. His newer statements about not being racist include: why is there a featured post by a leader calling me racist and then being racist to an entire group of oppressed people? By this, by the way, he means I'm being racist to white people by calling him out. Peep the skin color. I am 100% not racist. I actually don't fit the definition of racism. If I actually did fit the definition of racism, I would just call myself racist. Please understand, us whites are under attack, and talking about why I'm proud to be white in the face of anti-white racism is not redacted racist. Where was I racist? So where am I racist? I can't be racist. I would literally rather be racist, which I'm not. I made a response proving I'm not racist. Proof you're racist and I'm not. So let's take a look at exactly what it was that made me so racist and him not racist at all in the slightest. And you might hear these and say, well, our glorious and benevolent God Emperor, they're clearly telling us directly they're not racist. Case closed, right? The case is not yet closed. What they're doing is what we in the industry call saving face. I am here to forward the thesis that they are lying. Doomer is racist, or at very best, fundamentally fails, willfully or otherwise, at understanding what race, racism, systematic racism, oppression, ethnicity, cultural hegemony, and bias are. To advance this thesis, however, we need to understand some terms. The Oxford Learner's Dictionary gives us two interrelated definitions for racism. 1. The unfair treatment of people who belong to a different race, violent behavior towards them. And 2. The belief that there are different races of people with different characteristics and abilities, and that some races are better than others. A general belief about a whole group of people based only on their race. Another commonly cited definition is that which is presented from a simple Google search, which is highly unacademic for these purposes here, but is satisfactory for most other people. What we can glean from taking these definitions together is that racism is predicated on either bigotry/prejudice or superiority. That is, to be racist, it isn't necessary to be both believing in your superiority and to hate others for being inferior. It is indeed enough to merely have biases against one race. We can also infer and build upon this idea. It is racist, therefore, to deny that something otherwise racist is racist or even exists. To deny that chattel slavery in the United States was racially motivated is to be racist. To deny that individuals can be racist today is to be racist. Similarly, justifying racism or racial practices is racist, even if this is not blatant justification. Attempting to detract from racist practices and to smooth their edges, that is, to suggest that it was less harmful than it was through purely non sequitur arguments, is racist. As an example, to try and downplay the harm of chattel slavery by saying, well, Africans sold their own people, is understandably racist. It is a justification, and a piss poor one at that, of the abuse of millions over centuries. To downplay, deny, or defend racism is racist in and of itself, obviously alongside racial prejudices and hatred. This begs a very necessary question. What is race? Most commonly, race is equivocated with ethnicity, but this is a misunderstanding of both terms. Race is inherently a social construct, as it is not based on any underlying genetics, but is instead a purely social categorization based on many socially observable personal facets. As the National Human Genome Research Institute explains, race is a social construct used to group people. Race was constructed as a hierarchical human grouping system, generating racial classifications to identify, distinguish, and marginalize some groups across nations, regions, and the world. Race divides human populations into groups, often based on physical appearance, social factors, and cultural backgrounds. They go on to reiterate and extend this, saying, race is a political and social construct that is fluid. Racial categorization can change over time, place, and context. Race has been used historically to establish a social hierarchy, whereby individuals are treated differently, resulting in racism. Genome scientists are currently investigating the relationship between self-identified race and genetic ancestry. There is more genetic variation within self-identified racial groups than between them. I like Professor Audrey Smedley's definition. She states, race is a culturally structured systematic definition of a way of looking at perceiving and interpreting reality. Ethnicity, meanwhile, is often understood as genetic. This, contrary to popular misconceptions that even I believed up until recently, is false. Like the genome scientists pointed out, there is greater genetic variation within groups than between. Ethnicity is a characterization of people based on having a shared culture, e.g., language, food, music, dress, values, and beliefs, related to common ancestry and shared history. However, I am electing here to stipulate that ethnicity is primarily related to shared genetics and similar genetic markers. Genetic differences are central to many claims racists make and the plausible deniability, more on this in a bit, that they engage in. Moreover, it is very convenient to have a dichotomy of terms, one social and one biological. But regardless of the academic definition you will find among literature or the stipulated definition I'm using today, ethnicity is often correlated with race, but neither are ever dependent on one another. Race is not based on ethnicity, and ethnicity is not based on race, a very important understanding to have for later. The last part of the equation, and perhaps the most important, is an understanding of systemic racism. No matter your personal beliefs regarding its existence or its extent, it is absolutely necessary to properly regard it academically. This next part is a very long quote, but all of it is important. Systemic racism is a scientifically traceable phenomenon, urgent for cognitive scientists to address. This tutorial reviews the built-in systems that undermine the opportunities and outcomes by racial category, with a focus on challenges to Black Americans. From American colonial history, explicit practices and policies reinforce this advantage across all domains of life, beginning with slavery and continuing with vastly subordinated status. Racially segregated housing creates racial isolation, with disproportionate costs to Black Americans' opportunities, networks, education, wealth, health, and legal treatment. These institutional and societal systems build in individual bias and racialized interactions, resulting in systemic racism. Unconscious inferences, empirically established from perceptions onward, demonstrate non-Black Americans' inbuilt associations, pairing Black Americans with negative variances, criminal stereotypes, and low status, including animal rather than human. Implicit racial biases, improving only slightly over time, embed within non-Black individuals systems of racialized beliefs, judgments, and effects that predict racialized behavior. Interracial interactions likewise convey disrespect and distrust. These systemic individual and interpersonal patterns continue partly due to non-Black people's inexperience with Black Americans and reliance on societal caricatures. Despite systemic challenges, Black Americans are more diverse now than ever, due to resilience, many succeeding against the odds, immigration, producing varied backgrounds, and intermarriage, increasing the multiracial proportion of the population. Intergroup contact can foreground black diversity, resisting systemic racism, but white advantages persist in all economic, political, and social domains. Cognitive science has an opportunity to include in its study of the mind the distortions of reality about individual humans and their social groups. Systemic racism is, as we can see, the notion that there are ingrained racial biases and practices within societal institutions. Slavery was the most obvious form of systemic racism, same with Jim Crow laws and other segregational practices. But other practices are less immediately visible. Redlining laws, which institutionally discriminate against minorities, police signaling out and targeting non-white people, jobs which hire people less if their name is exotic, the long history of criminalized substances for the express purpose of racial targeting, and more. Another necessary facet is understanding how practices of the past affect us today. Whether or not racism is still innate in our modern institutions, the systemic racism of the past has a direct line of influence on the present. The most obvious is generational wealth, as a family who has never been given the equal opportunity to build wealth for literal centuries is far more likely to still be in poverty today. No matter how you slice it, systemic racism at minimum was real, and its outcomes and systemic problems still exist today, which ought to be rectified. To get a better framework of how these definitions interact with the various claims made by Doomer, we need to take a look at two more things. The first is plausible deniability. Okay, that was bad.
Plausible deniability? No, just roll with it.
Plausible deniability is a common tactic among political leaders and just anyone in any authoritative position at all. It refers to the ability and intentional obfuscation of what you say in order to literally plausibly deny your involvement, such as a suspicious healthcare CEO wording his statements to provide a perspective where it is not impossible to rationalize that he wasn't aware of what his underlings were up to with claims denial. Presidents and war criminals, but I repeat myself, love this tactic. In online spheres, this term has emerged to describe something certainly less severe, but damning nevertheless. Colloquially, plausible deniability is used among online personalities who regularly engage in political or politically tangential discussions in order to insinuate or heavily imply certain beliefs or conclusions in such a way as to allow for a possible perspective wherein they don't actually believe those ideas. Someone telling you to think about how Jews have been kicked out of 108 countries is, cue a literal interpretation of verbiage, not saying anything anti-Semitic. They have plausible deniability and can, in theory, claim that they are not anti-Semitic based on that literalist interpretation. They aren't saying anything, just giving some random, ostensibly true information, and can claim that the negative interpretation is the fault of the reader. After all, it's impossible to prove implication. Am I suggesting that Doomer utilizes plausible deniability as a shield and is consistently racist and makes racist claims and perpetuates racist beliefs and positions in such a manner as to argue, I'm not actually racist, I'm just letting the reader figure things out? Yes, this is exactly what I'm suggesting. Doomer is racist and uses plausible deniability to hide it. Of course, I cannot prove this 100%. That's the whole point of the tactic. But if you follow along with me, I believe I can substantiate this sufficiently. So, what does Doomer claim? Doomer has some very important statements which demonstrate how he views the world. Irregardless of the accuracy of these statements and beliefs, they inform his worldview, and going forward we will consider how they influence other statements and beliefs. What you find attractive is deeply ingrained, and likely a result of some kind of natural subconscious. What we have here is a very revealing picture. Doomer believes that what we like, our preferences, what we find attractive and similar sets notions, is ingrained in us. And literally, it is natural, a natural part of our inner mind that is effectively immutable. The next thing to note is that they failed to properly differentiate race from ethnicity. Really, it's worse than a simple failure to do so. Doomer actively goes in the opposite direction and completely subjugates race to genetics and to ethnicity. Some may say race is a social construct. This is not true. Only our perceptions of race and some categories are social constructs. This is because race is embedded in your DNA as your ethnicity. When this was pointed out to be fundamentally wrong and presented with accurate evidence on how, Doomer instead doubled down. This is about ethnicity, which is still race-related. Based on DNA, race evolves. You can take a DNA test and see things for yourself, and it will also show your ethnicity, race. You and I know this is wrong. They are simply wrong here, and there is no other way about it. But this position of theirs needs to be understood as it reveals necessary context for what else they say. Doomer views racial differences as genetic and completely innate to you from the moment of conception. Race, of course, necessarily refers to cultural distinctions as well and sociological backgrounds. This, to them, is genetic. Or at best, there is a non-insignificant genetic component. They similarly view aspects of personality such as likes, preferences, and attractions as innate. Though they refuse to air it outright, a necessary conclusion is that racial preferences and a multitude of biases are innate, natural. And as Doomer says, I'm a primitive person who likes looking at things through the lens of nature. They value what they deem to be nature and natural more than anything else. If it is natural, it must be morally good, and if it's not natural, it cannot be good. And this is further evidence by similar natural fallacy statements made against homosexuals. Anyway, such diversion doesn't even have the potential to result in reproduction, so as human nature, it doesn't really make sense. Thus, we have it that race is natural, racial differences are natural, and racial biases are natural. And the natural is morally good, and the unnatural, which would of course be the recognition of race as socially constructed, the rectification of racial differences, and the correction of racial biases, is morally wrong. But this is just the framework Doomer takes for even more inane statements. Doomer has, on multiple occasions now, decried people putting words in their mouth to construct an allegedly false narrative that they're not racist. Let's discuss. I'll be giving you a very big list and making some comments here and there, and then talking about it all together afterwards. Unfortunately, I won't be screenshotting everything I mention here directly from him, and will be using my own writing as visuals. I don't get enough views to justify another 3 hours of looking through Doomer's slop. If this gets enough traction, which it won't, I'll redo the video and clean it up. That includes this part. So, let's see what he says that totally isn't racist, according to him. You want to be racist to a proud white boy? You're gonna get a post about why I'm proud, which I am. I've dated some pretty hot Asian chicks, the types with big eyes and all that sorts. This is blatant objectification and fetishization of specific stereotypical racial features. It's just white people actually do face a lot of racism. People call me white like an insult and assume my background at the time. It's constant. If I point out any reason I'm actually proud of being white, I'm racist. I think I know why now. These people are insecure that they aren't white. These people are the real racists, and to them, in some messed up way, they are complimenting me by calling me anti-white slurs no matter how much hatred they do it with. Deep down, all they have to latch onto is their victim identity. But like the jealous fad activist, if they could click a button and become white, they would. I take it as a compliment, and they mean it as a compliment. Doomer here is attempting to project a perceived insecurity onto others. They are assuming and failing to justify a position wherein everyone who could possibly say anything he perceives as anti-white is merely insecure and secretly loves white people and hates not being white. Keep in mind, this includes anyone who has ever spoken out about how systemically racist systems still affect us today, given his other comments. Textbook racism, and deflection too. Do I stand by my slavery post? I do. Stand by. The words just come from a place of insecurity. Whenever you insult a white guy for being white... Hello. Hi, Pickle. What are you doing, Pickle? Isn't she so cute? She's a good cat. Oh, yes, she is. Oh, yes. Are you racist, Pickle? Yeah, you are.
You gotta leave that in too.
The words just come from a place of insecurity. Whenever you insult a white guy for being white, that's a backhanded compliment from someone who feels inferior. I'll tell you why. Please, tell us why. Pale skin is a rarity and preferred in most cultures. Asians and some Africans, including American Africans, often bleach their skin. This is because it's less common and looks pure, like a wedding dress. Calling white skin pure as opposed to the only possible interpretation that non-white skin is impure is racist. More on this in a bit. I share the nearly international opinion that I prefer pale skin and that it's special. this is racist. Explicitly so. To be a little more inappropriate, brown nipples tend to freak a lot of people out and they prefer pink. This is both explicitly racist and genuinely disgusting. Us white people also have rarer eyes. Even our brown eyes are lighter and Asians wear eye contacts to replicate them. Our hair comes in all colors: black, brown, red, blonde. It's also very diverse and ethereal, and it's natural. Not that I'm against hair coloring, but don't copy white genetics, then be racist to white people. That screams insecurity. But it's okay to be proud of rarer features and prefer them. Doomer consistently states that rarity is valuable and preferable. He consistently states that rarity is directly related to value. And as he constantly says white skin is rare, he is consistently saying white skin is more valuable. If you think I'm misconstruing this to say things it's not, just keep listening. This is repeated. I prefer milky, pure white skin. Asians are the most common race, billions upon billions, and it's their beauty standard. I do value rarity. A lot of people do value white skin because of its rarity and milky look. That's like saying a red dress is pure. The red dress isn't worse than the wedding dress, but the wedding dress is pure, not the red one. What matters is I'm proud of how I was born. Some people don't like brown. You could just accept that and leave it. Some people being him and those with his beliefs. Not mixed or adulterated with any other substance or material. This is how Doomer defined purity when asked about it, specifically asked in the context of race and skin color too. Pray tell, what substance or material is non-white skin mixed or adulterated with? When a trait you're proud of gets made fun of, it just strokes your ego. The same goes for white people. We are also systematically oppressed. Downplaying the severe abuses of slavery and centuries of oppression and genocide via whataboutism? Check. Notice how the rules of oppression are only there for white people? They just hate us whites because we built a safer society and they can attack us, because rarely do white Christians fight back. Obvious implication that non-white Christians are violent. And America was not even 30% built on the backs of slaves. Just gonna leave that one sit. Also, statistically, the violence non-white people face is by other non-white people. But hey, the white police are the problem anyway, even though they're less likely to use violence against non-whites, because it's all the media and BLM will talk about. Wrong hand. Also, statistically, the violence non-white people face is by other non-white people. But hey, the white police are the problem anyway, even though they're less likely to use violence against non-white people, because it's all the media and BLM will talk about. So often they don't see the crime that comes with immigration, or how they do not adapt to your own culture. Even in jail, most gangs are separated by race. Slavery is okay. Doomer later tried to modify this to be slavery with rights. Lol. Lamau. Bear in mind, the problem isn't owning that person. If you're just gonna be that person morally grandstanding that owning a person is wrong, please put the keyboard away. This is fetish posting. I'd bet like $5 that Doomer is just projecting his sexual fantasies onto everyone else with comments like these. Kink shaming aside, these reveal that he doesn't actually care about humanization. No matter how many times he more recently tries to say that, oh, but slaves should have rights, it's actually servitude. He doesn't deny at all that people should be able to own others. Another person taking something most cultures have done at one point in history. Something pretty much every culture has done at one point in history. At no point should you be using the argument, but everyone used to do it, unless you're pointing out how it's bad. People like to say black people can't be racist, because racism is prejudice plus power. While I don't agree with this statement, I similarly disagree with this statement, but the difference is I understand what it's saying and Doomer does not. Systemic racism doesn't inherently mean white people are more powerful than black people, even in a more leftist POV when you factor in other states of oppression. Women 99% of the time are less powerful than men. This would mean white women can't be racist to black men. Black people can be rich. This means poor white people can't be racist to less poor or rich black people. Disabled people can also have less power. A white guy in a wheelchair can't be racist to an able-bodied black guy. So let's talk about this a little bit. I'll go more in depth after the quotes section, but it's worth it to talk a little bit now. Systemic racism is systemic, not individual. Whosoever has individually more affluence than another individual is completely irrelevant to a discussion on systemic racism. Some black people are successful, yes. That does not preclude the notion that they had to fight completely unfair odds because of how society is structured in order to achieve that success. Moreover, Doomer seems to be confused as to what power means. Firstly, it isn't physical strength, Lamau. That one's just stupid. But power is also both necessarily an intersectional phenomenon. So Trite commented about how, this one single factor means someone's more powerful than another, are fundamentally flawed from the outset, but also power goes beyond the individual and also refers to cultural and societal phenomenon. Again, see the word systemic. Doubly flawed. Not all black people, of course, but statistically speaking, black people commit a disproportionate amount of violent crimes. Are you going to tell me white victims of black homicide, rape, and burglary are in a position of power against their black offenders? Most Americans, Canadians, and even Europeans are of mixed ethnicity. So when you're rambling on about white privilege, you could be talking to a Slavic person whose family member was being oppressed by the Nazis who literally believed in white supremacy. And around this time, there was a lot of repression in Italy happening to Slavs as well. More fundamentally misunderstanding what terms are. Racism is more about your ethnicity. Ghetto culture is not white people's fault. Other races, and actually mostly black people, are the victims of this culture. It's a cycle, and you just can't blame anyone else for. There has been a lot of government support, and it's made things worse. What needs to happen starts and ends with people in that culture. The government is actively responsible for numerous systemic issues which cause whatever culture Doomer is referring to here. Again, problems can be directly traced back for centuries through no fault of other races or mostly black people's. It is not their fault they were taken for slaves. It is not their fault they were kept as slaves generationally. It is not their fault they were systematically abused by the legal system and prevented from holding jobs or exercising basic civil and legal rights and getting an education. It is not their fault redlining laws prevented them from owning houses or again getting an education, etc., etc. At multiple points, Doomer directly blames the culture on poverty. Ergo, they are explicitly stating that the poverty that minorities face is completely their fault and absolutely no one else's. And moreover, that any attempts to help fix this problem actually makes things worse because... reasons, I guess. Yeah, definitely not racist. It's a culture with high rates of violence, and no one should try to adapt it. Asians were actually oppressed for longer than black people, and they are outperforming white people now. I don't care if it's a different canon. There is no point in race swapping. I also don't have a problem with acting, but when black people play white characters, they make the character itself black. They're not acting as a different race. So, firstly, this is racist as well. Secondly, this is deeply ironic considering they explicitly state they don't care about a different canon. You can either not care about what is canon in a given continuity, or you can care. It's not believable. This is talking about Ariel, the live-action remake. Ariel is a mermaid. What about a mermaid is otherwise believable? I've made some blogs on Ariel too. I think it ruins the whole aesthetic. Another thing is, whitewashing makes more sense. Explain all the different techniques you need to specifically film darker skin, especially alongside lighter skin. People with darker skin also usually have different makeup techniques, and it can be much more difficult. Another instance where it is obvious racism. Yeah, totally, man. Whitewashing makes more sense. The most obvious reason is most movies take place in or are made in America. There are more white people and more white actors. This falls apart both on its face and other things Doomer tries to say. Firstly, the US POC population is 38.7% of its population. In 2016, POCs represented a meager 13.9% of lead actors. If this was at all about representative numbers based on population sizes, you would be seeing more POC actors, but you don't. The industry is still predominantly white, far excess of what population statistics would dictate. And on top of that, a huge thorn in Doomer's side is that Ariel no longer has her bright red hair. More on that if you keep watching. But wait, redheads are only a very small portion of the population. So according to his own logic, it is completely natural for redhead characters to be recast as someone with another color of hair. Because of course, to them it is natural that minorities be replaced with whites for the purposes of whitewashing. Natural for mere convenience, no less. The difference between whitewashing and blackwashing is that one is forced tokenization, that's just there to virtue signal, whitewashing is naturally occurring. It's not racist to do the easy thing if white people fit the role. That's not racist. Not forcing someone in a role just because they happen to be a certain race is not racist. If it is racist, alrighty then. At least to admit it. They are harder to work with. You know, if reality is racist, that arguably makes racism realistic. Whitewashing is a natural thing. I've seen professional films where they don't even know how to film black people, let alone alongside white people, and you're acting like people should do all this extra work or they are racist. Yeah, believe it or not, but refusing, at next to no personal cost to yourself, mind you, to be accommodating of differences, ignoring that the existence of those differences is doubtable, is discriminatory. Specifically, it is discriminatory based on perceived racial differences, and is therefore racist. Whitewashing is normal. Blackwashing has nothing to do with technicalities, it just happens to virtue signal. Given two options, whitewashing or blackwashing, and picking the easier one, yeah, more immersive. Although I do think it's quite rich we are accused of white fragility by people who wear eye contacts, bleach their skin, bleach their hair, straighten their hair, and take on modern aesthetics that are inspired by white culture. It's not the government's fault there's so much single motherhood, or that rap glorifies violence, and kids get into gangs really early on. Self-discipline, personal responsibility. Bailing people out of trouble can easily make them more dependent. Regardless of the reason, which, by the way, are not white people's fault, a white person is more likely to be killed by a black person than a black person by a white person, or by police. Poverty in the black community isn't white oppression, and even if it was, but it's not an issue that white people created or that the government has to fix. Bailing people out of trouble can actually do more harm, such as the crime rates on reserves. I really don't like the casting of Halle Bailey to play Ariel. Not only does she not look like Ariel, but she doesn't even look like she belongs on the big screen. She's just very semi-average looking. See, this is gross. These types of comments are gross. Disney keeps making movies that everyone hates, and they hate white people. The rusty red dreadlocks will definitely ruin visuals where she has her bright hair flowing and dancing. Halle Bailey is also just a very okay-ish looking girl for the lead role as a beautiful mermaid. Art is supposed to be beautiful. More gross comments, which are deeply ironic, you'll see in a moment. There is more than one shade of red, so they didn't have to go for a rusty one. They could have gone for a brighter one. This completely contradicts other things Doomer has said. Remember, Doomer believes whitewashing is completely normal and natural, and therefore good, because natural is necessarily good, due to no other fact than convenience. Yet they also demand very specific character traits, despite finding someone with incredibly bright, literally red hair is inconvenient for everyone on the production. So which is it? Is it okay for directors to do what is convenient? Or do they have to abide by extremely specific standards, or their art isn't beautiful? Ariel is a red-headed Danish mermaid. Ariel is a mermaid. She is not Danish somehow. I don't have a problem with average-looking people in movies, but it's uncalled for that she should play a beautiful mermaid. So you do have a problem with average-looking people in movies. You genuinely do have a problem, and you just won't admit it. I wonder why. Still think the main character of a princess movie about a mermaid should be easy on the eyes. It's an aesthetics thing. Ariel is canonically a child, by the way. Easy on the eyes. Look in a mirror and say that you can say the same. The art your society makes says something about it. Pale skin is beautiful, and I think people should learn to be proud of it, not tan it. The reason for this is because lighter skin is seen as a standard of beauty. This is because throughout history, the upper class have been able to stay indoors, while the working class is out in the sun. This is not why, and is a downplay of imperialist and colonial forces which have direct effects on culture. There is also a debate to be had about rare traits being more sought after on a more instinctual level. Light skin tones are among the most rare in the world, There is nothing wrong with brown deers, but isn't it a sight to see a rare white one? Light skin is internationally the most sought after. You are gifted to have it naturally. Pale skin is visually accompanied with pink lips, nails, and other things. There is much more of that beautiful rosy pink in your body overall. Yep, that's racist. Let's talk about it. I don't want any comments about how, oh, some of those things are indefensible or weird, but yes, some of them are fine or reasonable. I don't see how they make him racist. Whether or not an individual comment is explicitly racist was never the point. It is how you take them all together holistically, and how they reveal a sickening worldview in context of Doomer's other statements. If I get anything like that, and I'll be honest, I'm expecting to, I'll know you didn't actually listen or watch the video. Good luck. I probably don't have to hammer this in any more than it has been already. Just letting Doomer's comments air out on their own is more than likely sufficient for you to understand that he is actually racist, and that his platitudes are that and nothing more. But I wouldn't be satisfied with the ending. So we're doing one last run through. Doomer either doesn't understand what systemic racism is, or outright denies it despite understanding it. Whatever the case, he doesn't think it's real. And there is no defensive interpretation of this. As laid out by many of his comments, he has misconstrued systemic racism. Recall the definition laid out earlier. Doomer doesn't believe institutions can be racist or have any effect on racial disparities. It can't be the government's fault, because that would give the notion credibility. Slavery can't have had any lasting effects. Specifically, Doomer is adamant that it isn't the fault of white people, that white people had absolutely nothing to do with any of this, that it is exclusively the fault and responsibility of the people who are victimized by these issues. Doomer blames cultural issues for every single problem minorities face in the US today. Mind you, he primarily blames cultural issues on poverty, and poverty on cultural issues. And these are both the fault of the impoverished. And actually, in his twisted worldview, trying to help impoverished people is necessarily bad and creates worse problems. No one is, or at least no one should, blame every white person individually. I did not create systemic racism, nor did Doomer. Not every single white person is to blame, but the only people who are to blame are white. He misconstrues the latter with the former. He has to be honest. He is so entrenched in his own identity politics that he has to see the world as hating white people at every opportunity, that they are the victims, and that every single other instance of systemic oppression or racism are purely the fault of the individuals. This is why he has to project insecurity onto anyone making fun of him, or the asinine things he says, or that make genuinely valid points against his claims. Because if it's not insecurity, he has to reconcile with potentially being wrong. Moreover, this bleeds into everything else he says. He will defend practices like whitewashing for no other reason than it is white people getting the advantage. And I can say this because all of his arguments are entirely self-defeating. Yet he will decry blackwashing as an evil, solely politically driven thing that ruins all art. There is a chronic need to view white people as individuals who do what is rational and peaceful and could never do anything with lasting impact. Yet people of color are both entirely monolithic when it's politically convenient for him, such as when he talks about how black people apparently can't act, and extremely individualistic when it's convenient for him, such as again by suggesting that their poverty is their own fault and the rest of society had nothing to do with it. And that part gets worse, actually. We know Doomer views race as genetic and intrinsic and natural, and that any resulting racial disparity is natural and genetic. Whether he knows it or not, he continually pushes the narrative that the socioeconomic problems minorities face are genetic, hardwired into their biology. That's why he's so comfortable calling them violent or blatantly lying about police interactions. He doesn't care what the statistics actually say, he has to believe this. Whether he is aware these beliefs are racist or not, they are. Though I'm sure he does know. Fetishization of Asians and a weird, disgusting comment about brown nipples Surely rang through his brain at least once that what he is saying is racist, even if he'll deny that. But it's obvious. Keep in mind, this is the same person who said, on multiple occasions, and attempted to defend this, that white skin is pure. When asked what that meant, he said it wasn't mixed with any substance or material. It wasn't tainted with anything. This is the same person who explicitly states they value rarity and make it a repeated point to mention how rare white skin is and other white features. They very explicitly state that white features are more valuable than brown features, or that white skin is more valuable and more pure than brown skin. Like he says himself, some people don't like brown. Even my autocorrect knows what's up. It tried changing brown to brown people.
Maybe your ad-libs.
Okay. Perhaps he refused to accept this as racial because he believes it is perfectly natural, normal, and thus righteous.
Loser!
He says so at multiple points, that it is perfectly natural to value white skin and white features more. And we know he views the natural as what is good and preferred in life. This is an attempt to justify his own racism. It's not like he's above calling racism in line with reality, as we've seen. This naturalistic lens also leads to him denying the long and bloody history of imperial colonialism. What a transition, if I do say so myself. Doomer consistently denies any possible reason people may engage in practices like skin bleaching or value white skin more than colored skin for any reason besides it being natural and intrinsic in our psychology, which is racist to say, or at best some minor palliatives about how rich people didn't have to work in the sun. With this, he can sweep under the rug our past. When one society engages in imperialism or colonialism or both, they project their power onto their populations, economically, militarily, and culturally. The degree of subjugation varies, but it is subjugation nonetheless. Doomer doesn't care about that, of course. He doesn't care about dehumanization or human rights or the autonomy of the individual, yet maintains it as necessary when talking about helping minorities out of poverty. How curious. But I digress. Adopting the cultural beliefs of those in power is both expected from a cultural perspective and was oftentimes a matter of survival. Under oppressive circumstances, you have to begin to value your oppressors and their cultural artifacts to fit in. And even after some of the oppression has been lifted, even if some people believe it's been 100% done away with, those cultural oddities stick around. It is passed through the generations that white skin is valuable, not because of some intrinsic and natural psychological response to rarity or purity, but rather as an artifact from the time when people were legitimately taught that white skin is blessed by God and that colored skin is damned and hated by God and other such teachings. But again, Doomer has to deny this. He cannot envisage a world where the past has consequences, and any of his racial biases and prejudices are not completely scientific in nature. So, yeah, Doomer is racist. By every definition too, and they attempt to deny, defend, and downplay racism at every opportunity. Hopefully this gives you all a little more insight into how they operate and how others like him operate. Can't wait to be told that I'm taking everything out of context or overgeneralizing. You do not want to see me cover every single post, too. Let me speak to you directly for a moment, Doomer. I know damn well that you know who you are. I don't know if you're listening to this. To be fair, if someone wrote and then recorded 7,000 words airing out my inconsistencies and dirty laundry, I don't think I'd stick around either. But if you are, hello! I'm glad you could make it. I don't hate you, but you are execrable, you are recalcitrant, you are fractious, your beliefs are anachronistic, your posts are impetuous, and you're vainglorious. But I don't mean to just make this part an invective. This is meant to be didactic. Again, I don't hate you, but man, you have some damn large character flaws. And yes, you are racist. I hope you can understand that in a clearer light now. Whether you truly understood it or not, your beliefs are racist. And that's uncomfortable to realize. It sucks to realize you hold inaccurate and truly hateful beliefs. And that'll never be okay. But now you can do away with them. You can reformulate your worldview to be more consistent, more science-based, to accept and understand our history. I may have called this video a guillotine, but you were never intended to be the victim, only your beliefs. If you're listening, I hope you can take some time to reflect. And if you defend yourself, please do so thoroughly. I won't lie, I don't take you all that seriously. No one else does either. You're not respected because honestly, dude, you suck at debating. Your entire argumentation is entirely lackluster. So, let's see what you can do. Don't disappoint me. Is what I concluded the original blog with. As I said, he decided to respond. Doomer doubled down. And in the worst possible way, too. He lied. And he disappointed me. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to read his response post in its entirety and point out every part where he objectively lied. Because I'm a political YouTuber with nothing better to do with my time. Now, obviously, I have it on my phone here, and I will be reading it on here, but the screenshots of the post in its entirety should be available on screen. So, it is titled, I am 100% not racist. Semantics. If I say I'm not racist, it isn't to save face, it's because I actually don't fit the definition of racism. And he presents another definition presented from Google. And he goes on to provide another picture that he took from my original post. This is the one the user used, which is niche, by the way. Just go to Google, don't go looking for rare definitions. I did not use the second definition Doomer presented. Look, he literally says, this is the one the user used, which is wrong. I brought it up because other people use it. I explicitly stated, which is highly unacademic for these purposes here, but is satisfactory for most people. He is lying to push a narrative. Let's go back to it. The only thing I said that fits this definition is, white people intrinsically burn easier in the sun, but no one wants to call me an anti-white racist for that. Why? You can listen back to what I pointed out him saying and see if that's the only thing that fits any definition used. Racism against white people is rampant and okay. Citation needed. Prove anti-white racism is rampant and okay. I never said it's not, keep in mind, but you still have to prove your own claims. If not being attracted to other races, which I am attracted to Asians as well, makes me racist, because apparently wanting to sleep with someone is the only way to prove that you see them as human, clearly we don't handle the sun as well as far more racist. I never said that being attracted to some people makes you racist. You are racist, and that's only one contributing factor. And I never said the word sleep. I never even said the word sex. Nothing I even quoted you as saying contains these words. You are again demonstrably lying about what I said. If I actually did fit the definition of racism, I would just call myself racist. Okay, do it. Call yourself racist then. I have enough racist friends that I don't hate racists. It's not about saving face. Racism is a human instinct. People are wary and maybe even hateful to those outside the tribe. I'm just too educated to fall into the trap. Educated, wow. Yeah, you're definitely doing a great job of showing that by lying about everything. Why would I try to save face on racism at this point? I haven't really argued against people calling me homophobic or transphobic. I don't care if I am. Most of the world's population is. I just don't want people discriminated against or hate crimed. Lack of attraction is racism is his next subheading. And he tries to quote me. It's racist to not want to sleep with another race. Okay, quote me. Actually quote me. Show me where I ever said the word sleep or the word sex or literally anything related to what you're trying to pull here. Stop lying. He says, no, I get what you're trying to say with the whole what you're attracted to is subconscious and based on evolution being racist. More factors go into attraction than just a recessive gene. Citation needed. Spoiler alert, he will never give any citation for anything he says throughout this.
What a loser.
You can't just have pale skin and light features and be hotter than someone with dark features, even if there may be biological reasons as to why so many cultures see pale skin as attractive, even including the Europeans who are white and still trying to be whiter. Yes, there are biological reasons for this, but that doesn't mean there are no biological reasons for attraction to dark skin. Before the Middle East, who colonized India before white people did, colonized India, India saw dark skin as attractive and desirable. Europe and other parts of Asia, like Japan, saw white skin as desirable regardless of colonization. Again, citation needed for all of that. There are biological reasons that white skin is attractive. It's rare, so people want to breed it, which is arguably objectifying.
Breed?
Yeah.
Breed?
Yeah, that's the word he used.
That's nasty.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm reading it directly off of the post. It's bad, isn't it?
Ew. Breed? Oh, that's nasty. Continue.
I'm leaving that part in.
Continue.
Which is arguably objectifying, but you're not going to call me an anti-white racist as usual. It shows wealth because you don't tan, and also tanning isn't healthy, so the appearance of lighter skin can look healthier. I don't call you racist on the sole basis you objectify people. It's only one contributing factor. Because you do objectify people, and you are racist completely besides that fact. Learn how to read, please. There are biological reasons darker skin may be more attractive to some. Dark skin is traditionally shown as strong and brave in Indian culture. It's more resistant to the sun, which humans need. It looks like the skin other tribes have, which feeds into the human desire to mate with people who look like you. Again, citation needed. You can't just make claims without any supporting evidence at all ever. His next subheading is, racism doesn't exist, apparently. This user is trying to argue that race/ethnicity isn't ingrained in your DNA, and it's just a social construct. So how the F am I racist if race doesn't actually exist? All I'd be talking about is traits some people have or don't have. None of that would be race-related, so it wouldn't be racist. So I'll make an amendment to what I said earlier. You're not either racist or you misunderstand racism. You're either racist, you misunderstand racism, or you're retarded, or all three. Go on, tell me where I literally ever said race isn't real. Show me literally any academic source ever that will tell you that social constructs are inherently unreal. Oh, that's right, you can't. Maybe that's why you don't source anything. You can't, because you have no idea what you're talking about. As you all know, I'm not of the opinion that certain traits aren't beautiful. I'm of the opinion that different people are attracted to different things, and only some traits are biologically attractive, which is outside of race, health. See, it's really funny how it's only ever the things that you personally think are attractive that are purely biologically driven, and everything else is only ever cultural. But if I said, dark skin is ugly and monoliths are hideous, apparently that wouldn't be racist, because race is a social construct and not everyone who isn't white has dark skin. Even some black people are albino. Not all Asians are born with monolids. Citation needed. Demonstrate how social construct is equivalent to fake. His next subheading is racist things I apparently said. So this user hears I was the victim of racism, anti-white slurs, people calling me white like it's an insult, people assuming I wasn't the victim of every kind of child abuse, and assuming my whole life story because I'm white. Me getting this constantly, and what do? They call me a racist for saying I'm proud to be white in the face of racism. That's not why I called you racist. It's one small part among many small parts. Stop being disingenuous. If a black person talked about why they're proud to be black, would they be racist? Not in and of itself, just as you aren't exclusively because of those comments. Yes, because believing in race is racist. Race is a social construct. Again, citation needed. I am proud to be white. I like my white features, and black people should be proud to be black, and Asians should be proud to be Asian, and so on. That's your ancestors' traits being passed down on you. They worked hard to survive in harder times, and now you carry their legacy. Be proud no matter your race. So, riddle me this. What did you do? What have you done? Being white, being black, being Asian, being anything requires literally zero inherent action on your part. Why are you proud of things you never did? Stolen valor much? But seriously, you can be proud for someone, like your ancestors, but to be proud of something you never did and never chose is arrogance, and honestly sad. Sad that you have no better accomplishments to be proud of besides the accomplishments of other people. Live your own life, man, not the life of people you never met and could never meet. Also, why is saying I've dated hot Asian women objectifying? Yeah, okay, man. Let me guess, it isn't objectifying for those Asian women openly talk about how they date a hot, tall Swedish guy. Give me a break. I love them. You know nothing about me. Yeah, that would be objectification on their part. Duh. But let's look at the context around that quote of yours specifically. You want to be racist to a proud white boy? You're going to get a post about why I'm proud, which I am, but I don't truly have the opinion all white people are hot and non-whites aren't. Which I didn't say, you may just be insecure. I've dated some pretty hot Asian chicks, the types with big eyes and all the sorts. You are using Asian women for social brownie points for your identity politics. You are using them in this example for nothing except their looks and pointing out stereotypical racial features. This is objectification. You are treating them as an object. Ain't gonna look good at the pearly gates, bro. So he goes on to a new section now. It's absolutely insane that you could literally only try and defend 2 things you said. There are 77 direct quotes I included pointing towards you being racist. And you could only even try and defend just 2 of the things you said. That's very telling. This next section is out of context. So they use my quote, "Do I stand by my slavery post? I do," which at the time they made their post, I don't. It was also about the slavery my ancestors had, who were white, and they enslaved other whites. It wasn't about black slavery at all, so it wasn't racist, but I can admit it was exploitative. Against white people.
Straight up racist. Like, not even reverse racist. Like, he's just straight up racist.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
This day and age?
Yeah.
What an opinion to have.
At multiple points, I pointed out that you later modified what you think about slavery, but it failed to actually meaningfully change that you don't value the humanization of people. You still think people should be able to literally, physically own others. That's what I talked about. Stop lying or provide some damn receipts. Do I stand by it still? No, I openly denounce that stance. That opinion originated from trauma. I have actually been treated worse than some slaves in the past. And realistically, opinions that come from trauma are invalid and basically feelings arguments.
Bold take.
You should never be taken seriously by anyone.
I'm treated worse than some slaves, bro. That's a bold take. That's a bold take. Wow. I didn't read that part.
I also said, notice how the rules of oppression are only there for white people. They just hate us whites because we built a safer society and they can attack us because rarely do white Christians fight back. Well, didn't we? I'm not going to say we were always peaceful and all of us are peaceful and that non-whites didn't build safe societies, but yeah, you can pull in America, you just can't pull in some African countries or the Middle East. So, again, justifying racism. People come to Europe and call us racist and disrespect everything we stand for and the culture we built. Is that not your priority right now? I say we get harmed, and you whine about, you saying other races are barbaric. Again, you are racist. So, you're just racist, right? Like, you think other races are barbarians coming here specifically to attack white people. That's what you're saying here, right? There is no other way to interpret this, especially since you're trying to call me racist for pointing out how you're racist. Every single time. White skin is pure, lighter skin is a trait Asians often possess, so tell me again how I am racist. You are literally proving you're racist. But Asian people can have lighter skin, so it isn't racist for me to say white skin is pure. Is it racist to say white people don't have the chocolatey skin black people have, the caramel skin Indians often have? I noticed you never answered my question. Go on, tell us, Doomer, what substance is colored skin mixed with? Because that's literally how you defined it. No, we're just not allowed to be pure. And I didn't mean unadulterated, I meant more like a wedding dress. There are elegant red dresses that are just as good as the pure wedding dress. That is literally your own definition. Go on, what does pure mean? Another new section. Somehow you could only find, count it, 3 things. Not just of the 77 quotes pointing towards you being racist, but 93 total. And you still had to take those very examples out of context to push a narrative. Very telling indeed. Police violence. Now, this part is rich, because it leaves out criminal statistics, you know, the ones that show other races commit more crimes, especially violent, against white people, more than white people do against other races. Citation needed. But yes, we hold the power, and you can only be racist against other racists. Actually acknowledging racism exists is racist because that implies race exists, which is racist. Yeah, and I guess what? I have a citation for this. Maybe you should actually read it, but that'd be too much to ask of you, I guess. And then he quotes me. And I'll read it again, because I like the sound of my own voice. And that part gets worse, actually. We know Doomer views race as genetic and intrinsic and natural, and that any resulting racial disparity is natural and genetic. Whether he knows it or not, he's continually pushing the narrative that the socioeconomic problems minority face are genetic, hardwired into their biology. That's why he's so comfortable calling them violent or blatantly lying about police interactions. He doesn't care what the statistics actually say. He has to believe this. Whether he is aware of those beliefs or racist or not, they are. Effing wrong, I think it's cultural. No, you don't. I showed you the receipts, but you won't talk about them. I wonder why. He then quoted my entire ending. Of course, he can't keep up with a succinct conclusion and has to steal his way to a good writing. Unsurprising, given his normal caliber of communication. It was a lot, so I'm sorry if I couldn't get to everything. Understatement of the century. But I did enjoy your post, except for the fact that you are definitely the racist one here. Please understand, us whites are under attack, and talking about why I'm proud to be white in the face of anti-white racism is not effing racist. Citation needed. So, if you're keeping track, that makes roughly 20 instances in such a short time where I had to either ask him for a citation or said he's lying about what someone, mostly myself, is saying. And you know what's going to happen? He's going to make a response to this with absolutely zero citations. Absolutely zero quotations. Nothing. If you're listening, Doomer, don't even bother. If you can't back up what you say, why even say anything at all? And you have the gall to say, that's the problem with the debates we have. You don't have anything. Citation needed. Before I go, I want to say one more thing. I'm not talking to Doomer directly here. He frankly isn't deserving of any more olive branches. I want to close this out with what other people have to say. Because, let's be real, I've done enough yapping. Even though I'm quoting them, so I'm still the one talking. Funny how that works. I asked people of my community, and technically Doomer's community, over on Politics Amino 2 questions. Whether or not they thought he was racist, and how they thought he handled his own response. Here's what they had to say. I would say he's racist, but tries to downplay it through weird semantics. It's super obvious that he thinks white people are in some way better, but can't overtly say it, so he makes weird comments like white skin being more biologically attractive. It's a classic tactic. I think his response is quite ignorant of both what you said and the general opinion of him. He downplays being racist with more racism. It's very weird. Likewise, I think that his response also lacked any real defense other than, you're wrong, and then kind of proved your point with some of the things he said. I think he is racist, and I also think his response was an inadvertent doubling down, which only solidified the point of your original callout. To expand, his playing of the semantics game was an attempt to shift goalposts. See also the comments on my Gaza Genocide blog that try to do the same thing using the word genocide. Again, I'm not revealing who directly said this, but yeah, that's something that happened. A strategy which almost universally is an attempt to cover one's. Another part of his response that hurts his case is in the out of context section of his blog, which he refers to a previous stir in which he defended slavery. Here he completely reneges on his admission of fault and goes back to playing white identity politics to deflect from the broader issue of his racism. I do think he's quite racist in a very dangerous way, because it seems he is either completely oblivious that he is being racist, or he is trying to make it seem that his racism is something normal. He also seems to have some sort of race play kink. He says some very disgusting sexual things regarding other races. And the way he words it doesn't make it any better. Like saying white skin is more rare, therefore we should breed it more? Like what? He's just not the sharpest tool in the shed. As for someone who cares about women being endangered by the trans community, you sure as hell have no problem with harming human beings with enslavement. As a guest speaker, this is the most racist woman alive.
Hey yo! We're matching. I was asked what my impression of Local Doomer is, and to be honest with you, I really don't care enough to think about him. That's my genuine, honest impression. Aside from that, I genuinely believe that he himself believes that he's not racist, which is an absolutely crazy take in and of itself, because, like, that's crazy. But, I mean, those who can't do teach, I suppose. I think that the words he says and how he strings it along really doesn't do him any justice, because he just makes himself sound more racist. Which is funny, because if you have to tell yourself that you're not racist, you're probably racist. And I think that if he would have said the stuff that he preaches a really long time ago when we were in slavery times, I think he'd fit in quite nicely with people we would disdain nowadays. And I think that speaks volumes. Thanks. Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
She immediately proceeded to sit right next to me. I don't know. While you were talking, I didn't have anything to add, so I just went like a few times. Hi, this is Max. Yeah, this is our cat. This is Maximum Fluffbutt. He's a very fluffy boy. He's unhappy because he just got woken up from his nap to be dragged over here. I had no say in this, and neither did he.
He wasn't napping.
Well, he was still eating, probably, or laying down.
He was hanging out on the couch.
Oh, well.
Back on the couch.
Well, he's a good boy, and now he's here, and he's gonna be here for the final part of the video.
Yippee!
And lastly, as I mentioned prior, my friend was on the receiving end of serious accusations. This is what they had to say about it all. Yes, he is racist. He says fetishistic things about Asians and shares demonizing stereotypes about Black Americans. He's also the type of guy to say conquered, not stolen. He absolutely thinks that, as a white man, he's both superior to other races, while also trying to paint himself as a weakened victim. 2. His response was incredibly toxic and immature. He blew up at other members, resorted to insults and spamming everyone's replies, and making multiple blogs about other users that have nothing to do with your blog other than commenting on it. I do not believe his response actually rebutted anything. It culminated in a wall text of "no you" with no actual counter evidence or accountability. 3. It made me incredibly uncomfortable. This has happened before in another community, and he really tends to be a very hateful individual to minorities. He spends a lot of time writing hate blogs about how much he hates asexuals for not dating him, hating trans people for being more attractive than him, hating women for being feminist, and hating Black and Asian people. Resorting to accusing someone of something criminal or immoral because you're angry they think you're racist is highly inappropriate and selfish. So, yeah. This has been 808 Politics. Never stop learning that some people are racist. Say hi, Max. Or say goodbye, actually. He's so over it. If you appreciate at all what I do here, because believe it or not, I put a lot of time and effort into this, even when I probably shouldn't have, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really does help. I get a hit of dopamine every time I see the numbers go up, and that encouraged me to make it to next week. Speaking of next week, the only way to figure out what I'm talking about then, because I personally don't know either, is to be here. So, we'll see you then.